So on Monday, you were presented with the Nanos election polls that showed who is leading or potentially leading our for the Prime Minister's role on October 19th. So here is some information that we got. We looked at Monday's numbers, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So here's the information that we're going to graph. And I asked you guys, we talked about displaying this information over the course of a week. Which graph did we agree that would be the best choice for something that shows a change over time? A line graph. So we're going to look at some of our line graphs today and what we did to fill in the gaps, because remember we discussed there's missing day on Tuesday. Who would like to share their graph with the class?
Okay, so since it didn't show us Tuesday's data, we thought that we found out that liberals were going up, so we thought that we should follow a pattern. So on Tuesday we just rounded up the number to a bit higher, and it just started going up. And then the conservatives, it started going down, and then it went to neutral, and then the NDP just started going all the way down.
Okay, so what can we say about their graph? Is there any questions about the way they've decided to put their graph together? Yeah.
Why did they make this scale out of 36? Why did they make this?
So the question is why. First of all, the scale is. What do you notice their scale is? So this is the scale over here. What is it?
It's going up by 2s?
Oh, going up by 2s and it stops 6.
Because we stopped at 36 because there was no number going over.
Okay, so that's a pretty good reason not to go over. Could they have gone over if they wanted to? How high would you guys have made your numbers then?
Maximum of 50.
Maximum of 50? Based on what though? Why maximum of 50?
Just like to round it with like 100, it would be like more, like if you were to like do something with the numbers, it would be easier to.
Okay, could you have made this graph go up to 100?
Yeah.
Why is making it out of 100 maybe not the best idea?
Because no number passes 40, so it would make sense to make it up to 100.
In this situation, you're absolutely right. It can't go. We know it can't go over 100, but it's definitely not even approaching it. Any comments about this graph? Sinan?
Just for the scale, right? I think it's better to start with numbers such as like 20, and then count by ones or even in decimals.
Okay.
Since the numbers are so precise, like 33.1.
So you're saying because the numbers are so precise, you need a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Because skip counting by tens, that's a pretty big scale. And this one here, skip counting by 2s, we liked this scale. But what was the feedback we gave this group about using this type of graph?
That you shouldn't start on 0 since you're counting by 2s.
Okay.
On, like the whole number that's the least.
Okay.
So
Did anyone demonstrate that in a different starting point so that way we could see what it looks like?
So over here we just graphed the conservatives data. So we thought it would be pretty convenient to start 30 and then just count 0.5, 31, 31.5 and so on. So this was made it very easy for the reader to know what it's more precise for the reader to know the numbers.
So now could you have done all 3 political parties on this graph?
No, because we started with 30.
So you started with 30, so that would eliminate one group.
NDP.
So now it's a matter of trying to. So their scale is skip counting by decimal 5. That's almost too precise for what we're doing, right? Is there anything else that you see that you question with this scale? So yeah, this is a very precise scale. And it is actually pretty good for what they did here with just conservatives. But there's also one thing I'm going to question, is you're telling me that the difference between this line and this line is decimal 5. The difference between this line and this line, which is the exact same, is 30. So is your scale scaled properly, is my question.
No, because at the bottom, if you're skipping numbers, you're supposed to make this like, it's like a squiggly line.
Yeah, you put a squiggly line. So for those who have decided to not start at 0, which is great to do or not do, you put 0 at the bottom, but then you have to do a little line like this. That shows that I'm breaking the rules for the scale here, but then I'm following a certain scale. Did anyone demonstrate a strategy like this with all 3 political parties on one graph? Let me go for it.
Okay, so what we did was our scale goes up by ones because the numbers from the decimals. So what we did was we saw that the NDP was gonna go down. So we made the number lower than it was on Monday, and then on for conservatives, we saw that it was going down and then it was neutral. So then we made it on Tuesday go down and then be neutral, and then for the liberals it went up and it stayed the same.
Okay, so they used some reasoning skills to predict the Tuesday information. Why was making Tuesday's prediction relatively easy for you guys? Because when I was observing, I saw everyone pretty much had the liberals on Tuesday at 34, the conservatives at about 31. It was about 31, and the NDP was at about, say, 24, 25. Everybody did that. Why was that easy? Why was that easy to get that information? Sahir.
Because there's a pattern, like liberal goes up, conservative goes down a little, and NDP goes down a lot.
Would you say that you took a guess, though? Like kind of a guess?
Yeah.
But your guess was informed, right?
Yeah.
So in a graph like this, especially over time, you're going to get situations where there is a gap in the knowledge, and in this case, Tuesday was the gap. And you guys inferred really well. That's called interpolation. When you're trying to guess what's missing. What if I were to ask you to predict Friday's polls? So just say we added 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Over here, Friday. What would we predict as Friday's results? So this next part of the lesson, it's called extrapolating data. That means when you're going to make predictions, and the lesson here is, what we're going to analyze today is how are we going to make those predictions for the future. So we're trying to predict Friday. And my question to you is, what do you think this data will look like on Friday? And why do you think it's going to look like that? Yes?
I think for the liberals, the data is going to increase.
Okay, so you said increase. Let me put that little note here, increase. The consensus was, when I walked around the class, that it's going to increase. Why do you think your classmates, why do you think the groups here are saying that it's going to increase?
Because throughout the days, it's been showing that the liberals are increasing. The data is going up.
Okay, so there is an up. That's called, when it comes to graphing, do you guys know what when it shows that the data is going up?
Trend?
It's a trend, and we call it an upward trend. Okay, that's what it's called. It's got an upward trend. So now we've agreed that the data is in an upward trend. What will it look like? What will the number look like on Friday? What's our prediction? What will be the percentage?
Could be 35.9 or it could be a bit.
Okay, so let's go 35.9. why would this group, why would he say 35.9? Let's try and get in his head for a little bit. Why did he say 35.9?
So from Wednesday to Thursday, it went up by 0.3, so we added 0.3 to 32.
So from here to here, it went up 0.3. Now I know Don and I had a conversation. He said the same thing because he said that this went up by 0.3, so that's the trend. Did anyone have a different answer, or were you all around the same? Around the same. So then what would conservative look like on Friday?
30.8.
You said 30.8. That's very interesting because as I was walking around, I heard a lot of people say 31 or maybe lower. Why would someone say or maybe lower? Yeah.
Because the main thing is that Wednesday and Thursday are the same. But if you take that out, the only trend that is happening is a downward trend. Because it goes from 31.9 to 31, and then after that it just stays the same.
So you said downward trend. Let me write that down. It is a downward trend because it started off at 31.9, and like you said, it went down to 31. Even though it stayed the same, the overall trend is that it's going down. Okay? What were you going to add to that? Anything else? Because I kind of interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there is a chance because people think it might stay the same because 31, there's 31% and 31% again, right?
So it could stay the same.
But there's a chance that it'll go lower.
Okay. What about the NDP? What was our prediction? Here I heard a few different answers. So let's share what we thought here. Yeah.
I think it's going to be about 21 or 20 because from Monday to Wednesday, it went one lower. Wednesday to Thursday went two lower. So for Friday, 2% lower. So for Friday, it could be one of those two.
I have a question for you. Is he accurate when he says that from Monday to Wednesday it went one lower, and from Wednesday to Thursday it went two lower? Because what he's implying to me is that this dropped by 1%. So Wednesday to Thursday had a bigger drop than Monday to Wednesday. So I see some hands that are saying they disagree. Why do you disagree?
Because for Monday and Wednesday, talking about one, I understand why he's saying that he sees 25, 24.
Yes.
But if you said drop by one, it would be 24.9.
Right.
And he drops by 1.6. And then the next one, I also understand why he said it drops by 2 because he sees 24 or 22. But it's actually, I think it's like the same.
1.5 actually.
Yeah, 1.5.
So he said there's a 2% drop here, and in fact this is actually a smaller drop than this one. So you're absolutely right when he said he's just looking at the first number. But there's a reason why we have decimals, and like Sanan said earlier, the numbers are more precise. So you have to be careful with that terminology when it has a 2 drop. It's not 2, it's actually a smaller drop. So yes, they are also in a downward trend. So our prediction is his prediction of 21%, a reasonable prediction for it to drop. Okay, did anyone have a different number? My number was about 21 point, I'm not going to lie to you, it was 21.5 because I saw 1.6, I saw 1.5, and then I'm thinking, maybe 1.3 today. That was my thinking because I also noticed it's less of a drop. Yes, I know it's over more days, but it didn't drop that much. So I'm guessing it's going to be less of a drop. Now remember how the nanos polls are figured out. They call about 400 houses. They build from each other. Do you think there's any possibility that the Liberal data on Friday is lower than the data presented here, or what we extrapolated? Do you think it could be lower?
Yes, so I think anything could be possible.
Anything is possible? Well, it's true. Anything is possible. But why else might it be lower? Let's give a reason why we think it might be lower. Yeah.
There might be either like maybe favoring liberals, or they might be favoring the conservatives and NDP because they wanna people who want the conservatives and NDP to know like liberals are in the lead, so you better get your votes in.
So maybe the people that they called realize that liberals are in the lead and they don't want them to win. So they'll say, oh, I'm going to vote for a conservative. That's a good guess. Yep.
I think it might actually drop lower because it matters. Like maybe there's a possibility that when they get the votes, maybe the nanos poll, the people that call, they might actually change it up just because they want us to. Like if they want conservatives to win, win, just to win the election, they might change it. So they might do a liberal currently 35.9. They might drop that to like 34, and then add that to it.
So are you saying that they're going to mess with the numbers or change their questioning?
They might mess with the numbers.
Yeah, they can't do that. Well, they shouldn't do that. But they can rephrase their questions
Yeah.
to make you vote in a different way. They might guide you towards a path, yeah.
I think it can be lower because I was doing French work and I was on the dictionary website.
Yeah.
I think it was called Larousse.
Okay.
And then the conservatives posted like 3 or 4 attack ads on that same page.
So you're saying you went on a website and you
Yeah.
saw attack ads the conservatives posted against, I guess, the other two guys,
No, only liberals.
against the liberals. So maybe that as each day goes on, the advertising campaigns change, right? So the websites you see, and you know what? Everything you guys have said is absolutely correct. And when we are extrapolating data, here's the lesson you're about to learn. So this is our prediction. Here's the actual data that showed up. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Liberals, conservatives, NDP. Here it is. Ready? So that's how the data changed. In fact,
Actually,
the liberals dropped.
liberals dropped, conservatives went up, and then
Yeah, so now if we, and I'm going to do it on this graph here, they went to 35, which you guys have it at 35, but I need to indicate a drop. So I'm going to do it like right here. So they went down a bit. Conservatives went up. And NDP gained some support too. So now this is about a week and a half before the election, and look at the numbers, they start going up. This is on an upward trend. This one is on an upward trend, now this is on a downward trend. I'm going to ask you a question, is it possible for in the future for the data to crisscross? And the conservatives, even though they're listed second on this graph, to shoot into the lead here.
Yeah.
It is very possible. And the reality is, since August, the conservatives started here, and it's been going up and down. They've been trading back into liberals. So the lesson in extrapolating is what? When you extrapolate data, you mentioned a very strong argument. You made a very strong argument. What's the lesson that he was trying to share with us about extrapolating data?
that any changes could happen. So even if there's like a trend, it might not go as the trend is. They might just go up and down.
Yeah, okay. Now, because these guys dropped, they dropped by 0.6. We predicted that they would have, so if they dropped by 0.6, we predicted they'd be at 35.9. That's a 0.3 increase. But they actually dropped by 0.6. So it was pretty close, except they went the other way. That's why sometimes on these things here, you can't really see it. And I have to put it close because this can't zoom in. Something like, hold on, let's try this. Okay, it's hard to see, but it says here, it says it has a plus or minus 3.0 chance of error or something. That means the next day's trend could be, or this number, sorry, could be plus or minus 3. So what that means, especially when it comes to this type of graph, is that if it's 33.5, the actual numbers might be 30.5 or 36.5 because it's plus or minus 3. So even this data here on the Friday, it's 35, could be 32, could be 38. It's probably somewhere in the middle. Most likely it's 35. Same with the conservatives. It could be as high as 34.5 or as low as 28.5. The same with NDP, as low as 20.1 or as high as 26.1. So that's the plus or minus. You'll see that on many of these types of graphs. But when you extrapolate data, there's a lot to consider, and you guys pretty much pinpointed everything you need to consider when it comes to this.